will make a difference, Mr. Speaker.
I call Carmel Cipollone.
Chair, thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak to this. I sat through what was actually a really painful estimates hearing in Select Committee with the Minister of Social Development present, Mr. Chair, and I want to talk to a little bit of what was discussed in that meeting and challenge a little bit of what the former Speaker spoke about. Mr. Chair, there are three issues that really came up that I want to discuss today in the estimates hearing. First was that child hardship package, so let's talk a little bit about that today. Secondly was from benefit to employment. Is that really happening? Does the government have an emphasis on that or not? And the third thing is MSD's dealings with relationships Aotearoa, which they fronted at that hearing, Mr. Speaker, so I'll speak to that as well. Firstly, and the member Alfred Ngaro touched on this, the government's child hardship package. They made this announcement, Mr. Speaker, 25 additional dollars going into the pockets of families who are on benefits. Mr. Speaker, what they didn't give when they made that announcement was the detail. So let's look at this children in hardship bill and what that entails and what it really will mean for families. They said $25 per family, not per child, per family. But actually, there's going to be a lot of families that don't get that entire $25 because they were getting access to a disability allowance, temporary additional support, a whole lot of other things. So they may not get the $25, they may not get anything, they may get $12.50. Mr. Speaker, they extended the work, well, they're looking to extend the work obligations alongside this additional $25 a week, expecting parents or sole parents to go back to work when their youngest turns 3 rather than turns 5. We asked the Ministry for documentation or evidence to support why they might make that call, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Chair, all of the reports that we got back didn't support that move at all. In fact, there was no New Zealand evidence to support what they were doing. All of the evidence was overseas evidence, and the overseas evidence said that when you impose these types of work obligations on sole parents, then you are likely to have the adverse effect where you drive them further into poverty. Was any of that advice or research taken on board? The Minister and the Ministry chose to ignore that, Mr. Speaker. We've seen recently that there are real issues in New Zealand with early childhood education in terms of access to quality early childhood education. And yet with the extension of these work obligations, these primarily women are going to be expected to go back into part-time work, put their children into ECE, and the standard of ECE available has been questioned recently by experts, by New Zealanders, by the general public. It is something that the Minister it is something that the national government still refuse to address, Mr. Chair. I want to bring up the fact that we've been told with the legislation that the government is introducing that there will be an extension of childcare subsidies. Well, Mr. Chair, there's a problem there too, because whereas there are serious overspend every year, it's in the accessing of childcare subsidies. So they're saying they're going to extend it. They are saying that they're pushing people into work and that they're providing more opportunities in terms of childcare subsidies. Well, then why are there 1,800 less people in the most recent year compared to the last accessing childcare subsidies? Why has the number of people accessing childcare subsidies over the last 5 years dropped by 2,500 people? Because they're not accessing it because the government's making it difficult, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, this government's not aspirational for people, and I want to make that point. They are pushing primarily women, these women, out into jobs that are any job. I just talked to a woman yesterday who has taught for the last 13 years in Samoa, has come back, she's a qualified teacher, she did her training here. She thought, okay, yep, I'll do this MSD course. 16 weeks she has to do this course for. She goes along, she's a qualified teacher. She's sitting next to a woman who ran an airfield, for goodness sakes, and the person taking the course that they have to attend for 16 weeks is saying, and at the end of this, you might get a job at McDonald's. How aspirational is that for these women, Mr. Chair? Mr. Chair, I want to move from that over to whether or not people are going from benefits into jobs. When asked in Select Committee whether or not it was a primary concern that people were coming off benefits and going into jobs, the Minister said it's not necessarily about employment, it's about independence. Now, how independent can you be if not only you're not getting an income from work, but you're not getting any support from the state? When we continued down that line of questioning, her MSD CEO said, well, those people that aren't in work and aren't getting a benefit have other means. And the minister sat there nodding her head. Mr Chair, Mr Chair.
The Honourable Anne Tolley.
Mr Chair.